In 1861, the Civil War began. It proved to be the most devastating war in U.S. history, resulting in twice as many casualties as in World War II. 36,000 Union soldiers and 25,000 Confederate soldiers, a total of 61,000 men, died of battle wounds. Yet despite having more casualties, it was the Union Army that would be victorious after 4 long years of bloodshed. This was because the North was a more industrialized and populous society than the South.
An example of the North's industry being beneficial is the blockading of the rebel ports. Because the North had started off with an existing navy, as well as a strong merchant marine, it was able to virtually halt all Southern naval traffic while the South scrambled to build and organize a navy from scratch. This took a huge toll on the Southern economy, as they were unable to import the supplies that they needed, and most of the products that they usually exported for money instead sat rotting away. In contrast, the North's economy was booming, and had easily adjusted to the production demands of war. The situation was stacked heavily against the South. The North already had the capacity to produce and transport war supplies, whereas the South was not able to produce all that they needed. In the last portion of the war, the supply of Confederate resources was dwindling. In Confederate camps, starvation was a perpetual danger. However, in the North, the soldiers were abundantly supplied. Resources were always available, so much so, in fact, that they were sometimes wasted.
In addition to having an excess of supplies, the North had an excess of soldiers due to its greater population. The Battle of Antietam is an example of how this led the Union to victory. It would prove to be a major turning point in the Civil War. It was the first battle following a long series of losses, after which the North could claim victory. But strangely enough, in the numerical sense, the North had lost the Battle of Antietam. The Union had suffered more than 12,000 casualties, while the Confederates only had lost 10,000. Despite this, the Union was able to put the right spin on it and call it a win, because they had lost only 1/8 of their men, in contrast to the Confederates, who lost more than 1/4 of their men. The North's greater population allowed it to turn what would have been a loss into a win. This win was what enabled Abraham Lincoln to finally issue the Emancipation Proclamation.
I further declare and make known that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed service of the United States to garrison forts, positions, stations, and other places, and to man vessels of all sorts in said service. Abraham Lincoln, Emancipation Proclamation.
The Emancipation Proclamation introduced many new soldiers from the black population who were willing to fight for the preservation of the Union. Before the proclamation, black Northerners were not allowed to fight in the Union Army. Allowing them to fight added even further to the already impressive force of the North. The South's comparatively small force could not effectively fight the North's gargantuan army.
I agreed to undertake the organizing of a band of scouts, composed of colored men, whose business would be to go into the rebel states, beyond the lines of our armies, and carry the news of emancipation, and urge the slaves to come within our boundaries. Frederick Douglass.
The Union was much more advanced than the Confederacy in numerous ways. The North had a larger population and was more industrialized. Although at times it seemed as if the Confederacy might win, the Union's greater population and industrialization lent it the advantage it needed to win the war.